only corporate law. It wasn't only corporate law that we're sitting, that we're writing 5 exams, because I think half of my time during the Nigerian law school, I was reading corporate law. And that was because apart from the fact that it was interesting, but it was a little bit difficult for me to assimilate when we got to the week 14, week 15, and so on. So I had to spend more time, and that was also part of the plan, because I just looked at the course outline from the little handbook, we were given. And I know for many other of my colleagues, many other of my friends, even some of your seniors, immediate seniors, they have similar stories. It might not be corporate law. Some might have readily be at home with corporate law. Some might be ethics. Some might be, other kind of courses. So you want to set out an outline on how you want to follow your goal to ensure that you properly execute it. Truth is, everyone at the end of the day will have a goal, whether they carefully, write the goal down or not, but they have a goal at the back of their mind. They have, what they think, okay, this is probably what I want. But it all boils down to execution, right? And execution is key. Without execution, the goal is just, nothing. The goal is non-existent as far as lack of execution, is concerned. So that said, you also want to attend classes. I know this sounds elementary. You've paid, I don't know how much now, 295,000, 400,000 nowadays, I hear, for the Nigerian law school. And the expectation is that obviously you're going to attend classes, but it gets a little bit tougher, not at this beginning, but when you cross over to week 10, week 11, you find colleagues who begin to prioritize personal reading over attending class. People would say, okay, there's really nothing that's going to be taught. I think I need more time to read, I need more time to properly assimilate what is being taught and all that. But you really cannot overemphasize the importance of attending classes, because the difference between class and a textbook is that you're hearing in class, you're hearing it directly from the horse's mouth, and they're telling you, they are explaining it from their own perspective, which obviously is the right perspective. But it's different when you're just, in the hostel or in the room, and all you do is read. Obviously, there's a place for reading, and all through your law school, you're staying in the law school, you find that you would always be reading, but you don't want to miss the opportunities of being in the class, whether it's an actual class, whether it's a revision class. It's so important, to be there to hear them, to hear the lecturers teach, to hear them, make their points, and yeah, it's also helps you with retention. To be honest, when you're in class, maybe with 1,500 people, 1,800 people, questions are asked, people answer rightly or wrongly. It just helps you, these are the things that on the day of the exam, 3 hours, the exam is 3 hours, a scenario is posed, you are a little bit tensed, a lot of thoughts are flying into your mind, and you want to zero in, is the action, am I supposed to comment this action by originating process or by writ of summons? I do think, to my mind, that what helps you to make that decision at the time isn't probably how much of the pages you turned when, you were in the hostel. It's probably the little things you heard in class that helps you to make that decision. And that decision could be worth 12 marks. It could be worth 15 marks, because probably after that, you're asked to draft that process you've identified, and you ask a few other questions around, whatever your initial answer was. So the importance of attending class, just, put it at the back of your mind that come rain, come shine, no matter how tired I feel, no matter how overwhelmed I feel, no matter how far back I think I am with my personal reading, once there is a class to attend, I will be there. And I can do every other thing after. Classes typically 6 hours, maybe 7 hours, maybe 8 hours, maybe you have out of 24 hours, you have the other, 15 hours, to do your personal reading. If you break it down to having 8 hours of sleep, you still have a decent 7 to 8 hours to play with. So it's all about time management, which, we would come to. And my next point would be for you not to lose sight of the bigger picture. Now there is a feeling in law school where you're in law school. It's all about law school. You do think in your mind, it's there is nothing else in the world other than law school. If anyone comes to tell you bar finals is not as serious as you think, you feel the person is not appreciative of your predicament, is not appreciative of your lot, is now the person doesn't see it from your perspective. But indeed, that is the truth. There is a bigger picture, and law school by exam isn't the end, in itself. It is a means to an end. As underwhelming as that sounds, it's the truth. It's a means to an end. No one writes bar exam, and at the end of the day, you said, that is all I did with my life. I wrote the bar exam, I passed the bar exam, and I am fulfilled. The journey only begins, most times from after the bar exams, after law school. So you must not lose sight of the bigger pictures, which means that you must be open to making connections, to making contacts, to friendships, especially if you didn't have many as an undergraduate. You must be open to attending workshops, events that are not strictly focused on the academic, side of things, events that are not exactly telling you how to answer by exam questions. You must be a little bit flexible in that regard to other things. And you shouldn't also shut out the outside world, because people come into law school and for the most part they deactivate their WhatsApp, deactivate everything. It's sometimes good to help you, focus, but I would always advise, nowadays we see that even law firms, some law firms call for applications even while students are still, in the law school. And if the type that's all of what you focused on is to read, to understand, to write the bar exam, then the question is, after law school, what next? I think it's also the title of an event that the TCH would usually, organize. So I won't go into a lot of that. So after law school, what next? So you are preparing for the bar exam, you're preparing to pass, to leave the law school, but you're not keeping your ears on the ground. You closed yourself to the outside world. And assuming all of the applications are taken, what happens, after? It means, yes, you did well in the Nigerian law school, but you do not have space, in some of the top firms to accommodate you, or things like that. So just generally, keep an open mind in law school. Great, great, great to focus on your books, which of course you will do by default. You need no telling on that, but it's also as important to build friendship. Friends will help you refocus. Law school is such a long period of intense, academic sojourn, or whatever the word is. So it's like a marathon, not necessarily a sprint. People start on the high, slow down a little bit, pick up. There is time for all of that, for people to, very rarely would you hear people say they ran, the whole course on the same type of speed um, for the whole, let's say, 10 months or 9 months. Oftentimes, some people start slow, then they pick up, and they end on the high. Some people start on a high and they never quite finish on a high like that. And the type of relationships that you keep, the friendships that you keep, how open-minded you are might indeed affect um, the outcome at the end of the day. Now, for me, I recall I came into the Nigerian law school thinking, oh, I want to make a first class. From day one, I think I want to make a first class. And I started um, up to week 7. That was consistent in my mind. But after week 7, I kind of felt like I took my feet off the pedal, and it was just autopilot. Week 7, week 8, week 9, week 10, week 11, week 12, week 13, with over 6 weeks or so gone on autopilot. I felt when I went back to look at my goal to ask myself, what really do I want? I couldn't tell myself what I wanted because I felt I wasn't adequately prepared for it. But one day after civil litigation class, I decided to have a chat with one of my seatmates. I'm like, so what's really is your goal for law school? She graduated from Babcock. She was like, yeah, she wants to make a first class. So I'm like, oh, interesting. So how are you going about it? How are you, don't you feel overwhelmed? I was already overwhelmed at the time. And she said no, that every day she wakes up trying to do, the same thing over and over again. It could be monotonous, setting your alarm every day at 10 p.m., reading from 10 p.m. to probably 4 a.m. It could be tedious. But we had a lengthy conversation, 2 hours conversation. I felt like that was the catalyst, I needed. And I recall going back to the hostel that night. On my way back, I bought coffee, which I would strongly advise you against. And I decided that I was going to read all night. Um, from that night, and I really never looked back, since then. So it was some kind of friendship. If I tried to be an island, I wouldn't have had that kind of conversation. It was almost a 2-hour conversation, which spurred me up, and I saw the possibilities. I just really wanted to make a first class. I didn't know why I wanted to make a first class. I didn't know, you know, the pros. I didn't know any. I just felt like, okay, you know what, law school, everybody comes and says they want to make a first class. So will I come and say I don't want to make a first class? But after we had the conversation and I was able to appreciate, a little bit of why there was a motive, to it, and I really thought to myself I could do it, then that really helped me. So you keep that in mind. Keep an open mind. Relationships that you keep in law school really, impacts your journey, and you have to consciously, build these friendships. I already mentioned that you must attend classes, and you must also not lose sight of the bigger picture. Now, I would say minimize your stress. Minimize your stress. The tension of the law school could be, yeah, a little bit on the high, but you have to take conscious efforts to you have to consciously think of ways to minimize the stress, to keep yourself fresh, to keep yourself sharp, mentally, and otherwise. And one of the ways, to do that is to eat well and to sleep well. Yeah, is to eat well, to sleep well, and to sometimes have a distraction. You cannot be for 10 months, you cannot be reading, you have only a triangular mode of transportation, if I put it that way, from the hostel to the class, from the class perhaps to where you're having lunch or dinner, and back to the hostel to read and all that. You need to be a little bit flexible. There must be some kind of distraction, healthy distraction, for you. It could be being a member of a larger community like the church, where you are actively involved, in a number of things. I know when we're, in TCH, a number of us were ushers, a number of us, were in protocol, and all that. And it's always refreshing when you come every Sunday, you see each other, you have discussions, it takes your mind a little bit off. Obviously, you're serving, in the house of God, you're doing things, but it just takes your mind, it just helps you, refreshes you in some way, and you're able to go back to, start again on a weekly basis. So it might be just anything, but you cannot just be in the hostel all of the time, reading all of the time. It doesn't work that way. You must also sleep, appropriately. I would recommend 7 to 8 hours of good sleep every day. However, you want to break it down, maybe 3 hours, another 3 hours, another 2 hours, whichever way. But I would say that, in the long run, if you do not have sufficient amount of sleep, it's definitely gonna tell you're gonna feel burnt out, you're gonna feel stressed. You perhaps might be sitting down to read, and the words might just be, running across your face and all of that. So a healthy amount of sleep, however you want to plan it, is important. If you're the night type, then you know that maybe immediately after you come back from class and you've eaten, you probably have to sleep so that you can stay awake at night for a long time. If you're the evening person, not quite the night person, you know that immediately after class, and after you've eaten, you might have to go back to the library and maybe continue elsewhere when the library is closed. A number of us had a hybrid, this kind of arrangement. And depending on the situation, you probably will find yourself combining that. I've really never seen anyone who went to the Nigerian law school and said, I can't read at night at all. I never read, at night at all. There might be few, but yeah. Neither have I seen people that say, okay, during the day, I can't read. I can only read at night. So there's a healthy combination of both, but you need good sleep. You must bear that in mind and ask yourself questions all the time. How many hours have I slept today? A healthy mind, or a mind that is well rested, is a healthy mind, which is therefore able to take on, a lot of challenges, whether academic challenges, in the form of preparation for bar exams, and otherwise. And I also add that you must practice. You must practice your MCQ, your past questions. You probably, as an undergraduate, I never believed so much in looking at past questions because I thought, okay, you know what, it's really not important. I did a few, obviously, some of you probably are like that, but I never really believed in that. But law school is different. You have to look at past questions, sometimes up to 5, 6, 7 years. Some people go as far as 10 years, before you're set. What it helps you, do is that you have some kind of expectation of what to see. And even as you're reading, you begin to appreciate a little bit of the concept and how they might be interpreted, the concepts and how they might be asked, in the exam scenario. So you're reading something about um, maybe a man or a boy who was 14 years old, but who committed a capital offense, and all that. It's best explained in the context of a question. When you look at the scenario, would the answer be different if this happened? What cases would you cite, in the context? And I think some of those past questions would usually tell you, okay, authorities will carry X amount of marks, and you begin to see that, okay, maybe the exam would value my appreciation of the principles, total understanding of the principle a lot more than the cases I have. So if I'm probably, you probably, the past questions probably will reveal to you that if the question is worth 6 marks, and I am able to give a complete understanding of the principle, then probably I may have 4 marks. If I do not cite any case at all, I go with a 4/6. If I do cite a case and maybe statutory authority, maybe I do have my full marks, or something like that. So it begins to help shape your way of thinking to say, okay, you know what, probably when the principle is mentioned, the first thing shouldn't be how many cases I have on the principle. It should be how well I understand the principle, how well I'm able to interpret it and apply it to scenario. Then every other thing is supportive, to that. So you must practice. You might first of all leisurely just look at the past questions and all of that, including MTQ, but closer to the exam period, you must be able to so closer to the exam period, you must be able to set timeline, to say, okay, look, the exam is MCQ especially, it's 1 hour. I should be able to answer 2019, question, all the 5 courses. You set a timer to yourself and see how quickly, you're able to answer that. And you find that as you continue to do it, you begin to improve. And yeah, you might start off and you are peak 1 hour, maybe 1 hour, 5 seconds, 1 hour, 5 minutes. The moment you do it for 5, 6, 7 times, you begin to find out, okay, you are maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes, 50 minutes. And, the more you do it, the more you realize that, okay, I can actually do this in 40 minutes. But then that's the trick. I would always advise, give yourself a lot of allowance. And if you're able to answer the past questions in 40 minutes, that means you're doing well. Because the trick then would be that when you're in the comfort of your room or in the class, just solving past questions, yes, the timer is there, the pressure isn't so wrong. When you're not sure of an answer, you can pick, if you think A or B is the answer, it's an easier decision to pick any of them, A or B, because why? You're going to come back to the to check what the answer is. But it's a different scenario during the exam, when you know that that is either the correct answer, or not. So during the exam, it takes you a little bit long. It could take you a little bit long to make a decision on an answer, whereas during an MCQ, it's easier to make a decision knowing you're going to come back, to look at it. But practicing a lot of these past questions means that when you're in the exam scenario, you do not have to think too much. There are some that the moment you begin to read it, you are looking for the answer. And what that does is that it saves you time for the ones you actually have to think, about the answer. If that makes sense. So there are some that you use 4 seconds basically to answer, but there are some that will require you to use probably a minute and a half, to answer. Yeah, and studying past questions, a lot of them would mean that you would have a lot of those ones that require 4 seconds, which would save you enough time, and you can be able to appropriately think about the answers, for the other ones, which would, the more time you have, the more likely, you are able to come to an answer that is correct, and obviously increases your chances of success. And I hope I've been able to capture, a lot of things here, but I would always end with saying that the God factor is key. You cannot go through life, as you already know, without God as your guide. And law school exam, the journey of law school itself is part of life. So which means that whichever way you look at it, you need God, right? He has to be your guide. He has to be, the one who directs your steps. And that is the only way that you can be guaranteed, of good success, both, in law school and outside law school. Um, Proverbs 21:31, the horse is prepared for the day of battle, but victory is of God. So it's you've probably heard stories of people who prepared and all of that. That's not what we're talking about today. But at the end of the day, once you're sure that you have God on your side, then everything else, is a walk in the park. I usually, when I was in law school, would just tell, I used to say prayer, which means that, yeah, I'm preparing. Having God on your side wouldn't mean that you just go fold your hands or, you just go sleep. Obviously, you put in the hard work, but it's God who crowns success. Um, and nowadays they say, now we they throw the dice, or how does the saying go? But now God they give double six, if that makes sense and all that. So you find that in a lot of instances. For me personally, I think it came when I was writing my corporate law exam. I try to be meticulous. There is a slip you have, you are able to you take the slip to the exam, or I think carries the exam number and all of that. I try to be meticulous. You know, corporate law was the fourth exam or something. And for 3 exams, I've always taken my slip to the exam, all and all that. But for corporate, for some reasons, I was tensed. I forgot it. It was somewhere inside my book. And I got to the exam and I realized that I'd forgotten it. And I went back to pick it, running back to the hostel. I opened my book where I thought, I was revising, and I saw, the slip there. It was directly, the topic, there was foreign participation. And immediately I opened to get my slip. I just saw foreign participation. I decided to use just a few seconds to just look at it again. And when I got into the exam hall, it was a topic I wasn't comfortable with, but, looking at it for another 30 seconds, 50 seconds, just that last minute just helped me a little. And I got into the exam hall, things were shared, and number one compulsory question was foreign participation. And I said it could not have been a coincidence. It definitely wasn't a coincidence that I forgot my sleep, and I forgot the sleep where we had foreign participation. I had to go back, and I decided I could have just taken the sleep and run back, but I decided after I saw foreign participation, I decided to just take a few seconds to look at it. And that is where I do think God's leading, comes in. And a number of other instances, obviously, anyone who has gone through law school would be able to tell you a litany of instances where the leading of the Holy Spirit, God's guidance, has seen them through. So if you've not had conversations, with yourself and with God and with the Holy Spirit, this is obviously, a good time to do that. Um, Not just for law school, like I would say, law school is just a means to an end, but for life, generally, you want to put God in charge of your affairs, and He's always more than able to direct your paths, um, give you more than what you are imagined, or thought about. Yeah, so I hope that has been insightful to some extent. So just to recap, I said to you, in case there were people who came in long after this session has started, but I'd said that you have to set a goal, own the goal. What do I want to make out of law school? There must be something like that, in your mind. There must also be a roadmap. How do I want to achieve that goal, which I've set for myself? And I've emphasized the need, to attend classes, whether it's a revision class or a main class. It's your personal reading cannot replace class attendance. That's just it. And I've said build friendships, build connections. Law school is the place. For most of us, the connections, the friendships, we made, formed in law school are still um, they still form, the basis upon some of the things we still do in terms of career growth and even personal growth as well. I've said, do not lose sight of the bigger picture. Don't think, okay, I'm in law school and that's the end. I can't pick anybody's call from home, strange numbers, I can't pick, I can't respond to messages, I can't do anything, I can't interact with people. It's just law school, and law school is just by exam and by exam. I've said, no, that's not the case. It's usually more than that. There is a whole wide world, outside of law school, and you want to be able to take advantage of that as well. I've said that you must minimize your stress, eat well, try to eat well, try to sleep well as well. There are key things that will keep you healthy, enough for the tasks ahead. Practice, practice, practice. I've said that you must practice your Q&A, past questions. They, would help you significantly in your journey through those. And I've said the God factor, that's key. That's like, when they say something is key, it's constant, it's what everything evolves around. So you can set a goal, you can have a roadmap, you can make all the connections, but without God, all of those things might not really come to fruition. So I hope someone has been blessed and you've taken back something that would help you to be able to ace the Nigerian law school and prepare you for the life ahead. So thank you very much. If there are any questions, very happy to take them.
Thank you very much, John. That was a very insightful session. And I, for one, I learned a lot. It brought back memories of our days in the law school. And I'm very sure that the law school students here and those who will listen to this session will take note of the points, the very relevant points you have made. So the floor is opened. We'll just take a few questions because of our time. If you have any question from the law school students, this is an opportunity for you to quickly ask your questions. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, sir. Good evening, the host. Good evening, the speaker, and good evening to my co-participants. I would have to ask a question about these drafts because we are not into the program so much, but I am already mixing some up with some. So I would want to hear from the learned senior how one can manage these drafts as plenty as they are, so that one would not mix up the drafts. You could see somebody trying to put in languages from maybe power of attorney in resolutions, in corporate practice, and stuff like this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Enoch. I would take that. I would say that the real deal, for me, and for most who have gone through law school and how they've been able to navigate, the issues with drafting, which are, like you said, a lot, is to first understand the principle. So once you understand the principle, you draft by the principle. Then I see there is a tendency to focus on the draft. Oh, do you know how to draft this? Do you know how to draft that? But when you understand the principle behind why you are drafting what you're drafting, then the draft just becomes easy. So for example, you want to draft, I'm sure you probably have done originating processes in civil litigation, and you want to draft substituted service. They've told you that the defendant, is nowhere to be found or something, and so you want to serve him by substituted means. So the real question is, why do I want to serve the defendant by substituted means? So you want to serve him by substituted means because you've not been able to effect personal service, right? Which is a requirement. So I have to apply to court for leave to serve by substituted means. I hope I'm still right. And I have to say how I now want to serve him, since I can't serve him directly. So I have to tell the court that, so obviously I have to prepare the heading of the court. It goes without saying, in the High Court of Lagos, in the Lagos Judicial Division holding in Lagos, there is a suit number. So I have to, what is the suit number? The suit number is that there is a case already in play, and every case in Nigeria has a suit number. So there's a suit number for that. There's a parties column. I am the claimant if it's Lagos, plaintiff if it's Abuja, and the defendant. Apart from being the claimant, I'm also an applicant because I'm applying for service by substituted means. So I'm going to be claimant stroke applicant, right? Whoever is the defendant is a respondent. Why? Because for every application, there's, for every application, there must be someone to respond to it, except it's, what do they call it now? Except it's one where you do not require the other person to attend court. So respondents brought pursuant to order whatever of these Lagos High Court Civil Procedure rules and all that, take notice that the courts and all that, then the prayers itself is that you are asking to serve this person by substituted means by pasting or doing this at their last known address. Now you have to prepare an affidavit in support of that. The affidavit is basically telling the story that on so and date, okay, I verily believe on so and so date, this person attempted to make a delivery but could not make, the delivery of the process, could not serve the processes, that since then you've not been able to reach the defendants, and that non-service of this process is going to mean that the case doesn't proceed, or whatever suitable language and all that, everything addressing support and all, so it's basically understanding the drafts. If you want to draft a power of attorney, why am I granting this person a power of attorney? Why is the power of attorney needed? The power of attorney is needed. Probably you have a scenario, the person is traveling out of the country and needs this person to be able to act in his capacity. So you are basically giving an indenture, power of attorney, which is, it doesn't require parties to sign. It's only the donor. So you have the donor, right, and the donee. Only the person giving the power of attorney is signing the document because of the language. And so you understand the concepts behind the power of attorney, and it's easier, for you to make all of those drafts. So I would prioritize understanding the concepts, and these are the things that make the key difference in the exam hall. When you are under pressure, you hear it's 30 minutes to go and you still have a few drafts left. You begin to think to yourself, is a representative action? Why, a representative action? So what is going to be contained in my affidavit for the representative action? Because there are a lot of people, and if you put everybody together, it's going to be, it's not the decent way, to go about it. If I use that language, you're going to have maybe class action, going to have 10,000 people in one process, going to be maybe 500 pages of court process for just the parties, side. And therefore, it's just better for these two people or one person to represent, these people, and they will be bound by the decision of the court. So once you understand the principle, the draft itself is not mechanical. So in answering your question, I would say that the language of the draft emanates from the principle of law that you are drafting. Once you understand that, then it's easy. Hope that was helpful,
Yeah, thank you very much, John, for that. So we'll just take one more question. Enoch, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. That has been very insightful for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we just if you have any other question, you have the floor. We'll just take one more question.
Maxwell, yeah, I see your hands are up.
All right. Good evening to everybody. The host of this program. It's really beautiful to see that this program is holding and that we are the end beneficiaries of it. So thank you very much. God bless you for this effort. I have I'll first of all lay background to what I want to say, then link it up with my question. The thing is that I've realized that for each and every one of these courses, there are no the same way of answering their questions. A particular course wants you to follow a particular pattern, and the other doesn't want you to follow the other pattern. So my question now is this: how do you reconcile this when it comes to the exams? Because for me personally, sometimes I even forget the particular course that wants one particular style. One course wants you to just identify and list. The other course wants you when you list by identifying, you need to give certain explanations on that. So how do you really escape some of this? Because I feel like it is like I've always had the mentality that it is always better to have surplus than to have so little. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxwell. I do agree with you on your last point, but I would say that goes back to the point about attending classes. So if you attend like sufficient amount of class, it would always you get a clear pointer as to how the folks in property want you to answer their question, which is entirely different from sometimes how corporate law, property, corporate might be different, civil litigation might be different. But I do, as a way of general advice, would say that it's always, always, always better to err on the side of caution. If you're taught to list, you just want to list and maybe do a one-liner, a two-liner, in relation to what you listed. This also goes back to looking at past questions, because sometimes when you look at the past question, you see that you've been told to list some things, and so what you've been told to list, maybe you've been told to list 10 things, and at the end of the day, 10 of them will carry 2 marks or 3 marks. Obviously, you do not have to waste your time to explain. But if you don't have time, obviously, there is no harm in explaining. For other courses like criminal litigation, I would always advise people not just to list. They would rarely ask you to list in a course like civil litigation. There's always some explanations behind it. But generally, if you do think you have time, especially in the exam hall, that would be a question of fact now, right? Whether you have time or not. It would be already too late a conversation to have then, but I would always advise you err on the side of surplusage. If you've been told to list, and the only thing if you've been told to list, and the idea is for you to list and explain, and you list and explain, you have your full marks for listen and explain. If you've been told to list and the marks allotted is just for listing, and then you list and explain, you will still get your mark for listing. You would probably not get anything for explaining. So it's a lot better than not doing it the other way around. And lecturers are human who mark your scripts, and they can see efforts from how your answers are presented. They can see a student who just wants to get by the exam. They can see a student who has put in some effort in answering the question. And I'm not saying this as an authority on the field, but I'm just speaking from what I think is the case. While you might generally have listed and explained where maybe you were only asked to list, it might help your case maybe in some other sections or areas where you are saying the right thing, but you're not saying it clear enough. The presumption might go a little bit in your favor to say, okay, from what I've seen the student write so far, he knows a little bit of what he's saying. So though he's not able to properly articulate this point, this point is a 5 marks point. We can give him a 2.5 or a 3 instead of a 0. So you want to do your best, and I would say there is no exact way of answering the questions, but it's always good to err on the side of surplusage if you think you have the time in the exam hall.
Thank you very much, John. Max, I hope that answered your question. Answered your question.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. So, thank you very much, everyone, for joining the session. It was really an insightful session, and I am very sure, and I believe the entire team, we're all sure that the attendees have gained a lot, more than a lot, and they've taken out a lot out of this session. Thankfully, we recorded this session, so we will share a link of the discussion so that those who were not here can also listen in and benefit from what we have discussed here. Thank you very much, Inyene John. And I know some persons may also want to reach out to him. We'll confirm his availability because he's very, 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 very busy. So in case you have 1 or 2 questions you want to ask him personally, we'll reach out to him and check his availability, and we can get him to speak with you. And again, like we said at the beginning, this is in line with the vision of the church, the vision of our pastor, Pastor Dagbo. Thank you very much for being with us here today. Tomorrow, we're going to have, as usual, our service in church. We have the morning service, 7:15 a.m. And the bus is always outside the school gates, right? And you have some of us there to also usher you in. And by 9 a.m., we also have the second service. So you can choose to attend either the first or the second service. And we also want you to come with your friends, right? This is just the first session of many other sessions. And like John said during his ministry, when he was speaking, we also have what we call the after law school, what next? So it's beyond you being in the law school. We also have a program where we bring together people who have excelled exceedingly in the profession to speak to you on what you should look out for or how you can prepare yourself for life after the law school. Very important. So we have a lot of sessions where we'll talk to you guys and help you guys grow. So don't miss service tomorrow. Come with your friends, speak to them, and come along. So once again, we want to say thank you very much for joining this session, and we hope to speak to you more on the group page and also have personal conversations with you as time unfolds. Thank you very much, and God bless you. This would be a good time to call it a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you.